Welcome back to the Ag Creators Podcast, where we help connect consumers to farmers. Today we're sitting down with Emma, known online as Ag with Emma, a creator who's using her voice and platform to share a light on what life on the farm really looks like. Whether she's in the cab, walking the fields, or breaking down common ag misconceptions, Emma is passionate about helping people understand where their food comes from and who's behind it. She's built an incredible community online with content that's honest, relatable, and refreshingly real. Today, we're talking to her about what inspired her to start sharing ag, how she approaches educating consumers, and why being authentic matters more now than ever. Let's dive in. Emma, welcome to the Ag Creators Podcast. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get into agriculture in general?
Yeah, so I always tell people that I never grew up on a family farm, which is mostly true, but my grandparents had a dairy in Wisconsin, and that was kind of my closest touch to agriculture as a child. I share pictures sometimes on social media of me around like John Deere tractors and feeding little baby calves and stuff like that. That's where that came from. And then we moved to Idaho. My mom got remarried and she married a farm manager in southern Idaho. And then since it was more of a corporate farm, like not a corporate farm, but like corporate enough that we couldn't go ride in the tractors with them because it was a safety issue. I never got to learn how to drive tractors when I was a kid, but we had like a hobby farm kind of thing going on. We had a couple acres in the backyard, and we had, like, I asked for a milk cow for my 12th birthday. Like, I was around agriculture. I grew up in an agricultural community. I was lucky enough to have FFA in high school, and that was a really good touch into agriculture as well. And then after high school, I was in college for just general agriculture. I kept going on that path. But I worked in seed production in college, and that's kind of when I started the social media stuff. So it's kind of just been like a tumbling event of a bunch of different experiences that kind of led me to know where I thought I'd ever be.
So did you start the social media stuff on purpose, or did you just post something and it kind of blew up and then here you are?
I started it intentionally on Instagram and YouTube. That's where I started, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I posted a TikTok that blew up, and then I realized that TikTok actually had potential to educate people as well about agriculture. So I started pursuing that as well, and that's one of my bigger platforms now. But when I started social media, it was just because my family was asking me what I was doing at work in seed production, and I started posting. And I had, I think, 50 subscribers until I went and met with like Millennial Farmer and Chet and stuff like that after I had networked and branched out. And then after I met with them, it just like shot up to 10K, and then I went on Harvest that summer, and it just like kept escalating, and I got to, the point that Harvest was over, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could just like do this. So I've never treated it like a job. I've always treated it like something I do for fun, and I think that's helped, but I also think it's kind of a little bit of an Achilles heel at some point. So
Yeah, and one thing about posting content like you post, it's really good for farmers, and farmers like to watch your content, seeing John Deere equipment or seeing tractors going in the field and just learning about what you're doing on the farm. But one thing I was talking about with my uncle is that there's only 137,000 farmers that farm about 1,000 acres or more in the United States, and you have a lot more followers than that. So one of the topics, how do the content that you post resonate with the non-farm community?
yeah, I think that when I started, I didn't know a lot about agriculture, and I think that was part of my goal, because I thought I had an original idea in starting a social media page, like, for agriculture. I did not know that there was any other people out there that did it. And then as I started, I obviously started meeting more of these content creators and stuff like that, but when I started, I genuinely just wanted to share what I was learning in real time with other people that were also learning. So I was sharing like, okay, there's this many GMOs, like this is how you AI cows, like this is what this means. Like I started with ag facts because I wanted other people to know that, and I saw the amount of misinformation out there, and I saw the amount of people being misled when it came to other creators and other sources of information. So I did initially start as an ag fact sharing, because I didn't have much of a story within agriculture to share. But then as I grew and as I gained more experiences, I think my brain has shifted a little bit, because we're so surrounded by other farmers that we forget to speak in consumer talk. So it's really helpful for me to be around people that don't speak farmer language, farmer lingo, because that's when my content ideas start rolling. Like, I'm kind of in a dead zone right now. My content is not doing what I want it to on the internet right now because I'm like, I don't know how to say this. I don't know, like, I'm in the middle of learning new things in agronomy and crop consulting and stuff like that. But I would rather learn it first so that I can share in speakable terms with consumers that don't know anything about what I'm talking about. Because if you think about it, your audience is bigger than agriculture, and we don't need to preach more into the echo chamber. Like, yeah, it's fun to banter back and forth and talk about, oh, this is how this is doing, this is what we're doing right now. Like, that is great, and that is a great source of the internet. But at the end of the day, the more you make your content relatable to the average jaywalker in, like, New York, the more that you're going to touch more people that need to see that content, the more you're going to influence the world that actually, you know, consumes what we're growing. So
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's brainstorm a few ideas that you've used to talk about the misconceptions. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see non-farmers that are saying about farmers in the farming community?
that definitely comes down to the organic debate, the GMO debate, and the spray debate. Like, that is the big three that I personally have to deal with working in small grains a lot. Because, like, equipment, you know, it's really not a huge deal. People are more curious about that. And there's not really a ton of misinformation about equipment out there. But when it comes down to the actual, like, biology and, like, life science of how things work, like, you'd think that people would know because they were required to take these classes in high school. Like, you know basic biology, you know basic science. Like, you should know basic genetics and how GMOs work and how organic stuff works, but people just forget, I guess. Like, our brains get so full, I get it. But those are the big three that I have to deal with, especially when we're making, like, spray recommendations. I haven't made a lot of videos about, like, what we're spraying on crops because I am honestly a little bit scared too. I'm like, I don't know how to approach this right, and I don't have what I feel like is proper amounts of education to share with the consumer and also back myself up. You know, like, oh, if I'm going to share this, I need to have, like, stacks on stacks to be able to be like, here you go, with all of it.
Yeah. It's hard because some of the stuff, I mean, it's killing herbicides, herbicides are killing weeds or they're killing insects, but the reason why we have to do that is because to make the most yield and to make the healthiest grain possible. But sometimes it doesn't come across that way, just that we're killing the environment or just killing things for no reason. We don't want to spray stuff to kill stuff for no reason. It's all for a purpose and targeted. But on that GMO debate, if someone asks you about that, is there any specific things that you tell them or how you combat saying that GMOs are bad or any negative part of GMO?
I always tell them the difference between genetically modified and selectively bred because that's a huge thing. And I always relate it to human beings are selectively bred, like, we're not made in lab. And, like, that might be changed, like, with all the new science and the, you know, embryo, whatever, like, people genetically modifying whatever. But if you think about it, and everyone's big deal is that, oh, wheat looks different now than it did, like, 2,000 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, no, duh, like, so do humans. Like, we have different shaped noses and, like, you have different, you know, features and qualities based on, like, where your family is from and your genetics and stuff like that. Like, this is how it's supposed to go. This is the cycle of life. Like, things improve. It's literally selection. That's basic biology. So I always bring that up, and then I talk to them about, like, okay, it's, you know, built to resist this herbicide, like, so that we can spray the weeds, so that we don't have to use all these nasty, dirty, nasty chemicals, like, that are worse, so that we can do our jobs efficiently. And that's kind of just how I start that conversation. It always branches off into different things. I always have that list of, I think it's 13 now, GMOs, of, like, what's actually genetically modified, because everyone always tells me wheat is genetically modified, and I'm like, if it was genetically modified, we wouldn't be able to kill it. Like, it would be a weed. It would not be, you know, it would be terrible. So that's kind of what I bounce off of, is basically highlighting on the difference of what it means to be genetically modified and what it means to have something that's selectively bred.
So what do y'all grow? You know, we were talking before the podcast about the differences between where you are and where I am. What do you grow up there compared to, you know, other places?
So I'm in western North Dakota. And North Dakota in itself is a huge, like a wide variety of commodities that come out of this state. Like goes on the eastern side, they mostly do the corn, soybeans. They also have sugar beets, that kind of thing going on. And then on the western side, we're mostly small grains. We do have some guys that grow corn. We do a lot of pulse crops. So we'll do, like right now, the list of crops that we are currently working with as crop consultants, crop scouts, is oats, hay, corn, winter wheat, spring wheat, durum, chickpeas, lentils, field peas. There's some flax, canola, like a bunch of that stuff, and it's crazy how much I didn't think about how small grains and stuff that we grow is direct to consumer up here. Because I don't know. I don't relate combines as direct to consumer. And then it is, but it's not like apples or lettuce or stuff that you see in California. But we are growing the stuff that's on the, back shelves in the bread aisle at Walmart, so that's pretty cool. But it's definitely a wide variety of what we grow up here.
So do y'all grow sunflowers too?
Oh, yes, that's a big one. Yeah.
Well, I was curious because you posted something about sunflower harvest, and that's completely different. Like down here, nobody grows sunflowers to harvest. If they plant them, it's like to hunt over or have a dove shoot or whatever. But that's something that would be really cool to see is sunflowers being harvested.
Yeah, so we do grow confectioners and oil sunflowers. I don't know a ton of people that grow confectioners. I think that's more in South Dakota. But we do have a couple of farmers that grow the confectioners, and that's what you're going to get in the bags at the store. And then the oil sunflowers, there's a couple different plants in North Dakota that they can haul those to, but they're super flammable during harvest. It is quite the mess, quite the cautionary mess, because we harvest them around October, November. And you're blowing off combines during harvest like 4 times a day at least. And then if you're driving the grain cart, you're always checking to see if you smell smoke. You're always looking around because the dust of the sunflowers is like super static, and it'll just like stick to all the bearings and all the hot pieces of that combine and just set stuff on fire. So we do everything we can for fire prevention on that, and sunflowers get so ugly when they're ready to harvest. Like they're so beautiful in August, and then it's like, bam, they're just like dead little zombies, and they're like soybeans but worse.
Yeah, they look like dead they are dead flowers pretty much when they're about to get harvested. They do not look very good. But since you're talking about harvest, you used to work for a custom harvesting crew. Talk about why farmers utilize a custom harvesting crew and what they do.
Yeah, so farmers mostly utilize custom harvest crews when they don't want the out front cost of maybe owning their own equipment, or maybe they don't have the time to harvest their own crops, which might sound a little weird. But some farmers have other off-the-farm jobs, like they have other stuff going on, or maybe they just don't like harvesting their crops. Like every farmer and their situation is different. But custom harvest crews travel from South Texas, basically Mexico, and different areas. They come from all over the United States, but it's mostly in that wheat belt of those grain states from North Dakota to Texas. And you'll have a crew of people so for example, I worked for a harvest crew. My boss was the guy that owned the combines, the tractor, the grain cart, a couple semis, a couple trailers to haul the grain off the field, a couple campers for the crew to live in. We'll start in South Texas and we will work our way up to North Dakota because of how the wheat matures through the United States. Basically south of South Dakota is mostly winter wheat, and then you get up to North Dakota, South Dakota, and it's a lot more spring wheat. But because of how all that wheat matures, they're able to start in South Texas. I think around April is when basically the guys that start down near Mexico start harvesting wheat. And then they'll start bumping their way up. And then by, I think, May, they're in or around North Texas, Oklahoma. They're still, harvesting winter wheat. And then in about June and July, they're in South Dakota, eastern Montana, maybe. I just remember getting up to Montana in like August-ish, but they maneuver their way up in their campers, so they'll have a farmer that they make contact with. They'll harvest the wheat for him. Sometimes they get rained out, like most of the time they'll get rained out of a job and be like, okay, we can't just sit here forever. They move on to the next place and some other crew will come in and like, okay, we can finish this job. It's a very fluid community, like they're always moving around. So that's why farmers hire them, and that's kind of how they operate. And then when they're all done with wheat harvest in northern North Dakota in like August or September, that's normally when corn and soybeans are done in Nebraska, Kansas, and stuff like that. So they'll go back down from North Dakota to Kansas or Nebraska and start harvesting corn and soybeans. But every crew is different, every farm is different, so they're really just traveling combines, and it's like a lot of oversize. A lot of people get mad that all the harvesters are going up the road, and they take up a lot of space, and they're all really slow. So if you live in the states that harvesters travel through, you're probably familiar with the combine convoys that go through. But that's kind of the gist on harvest.
So how does it work when you haul the grain? Are you hauling the grain like to the farmer's shop? Like, do they have grain bins, or are you usually hauling it to an elevator?
Yeah, so every farm is different, but we've had guys that have us haul it to the elevator. We have guys that haul it to their bin site. There's a lot of farmers in North Dakota that use grain bags, and it's just right in the field. So some guys might just park their truck, and they don't have to use that, obviously, when you're just bagging it in the field. But that's, just per farm, but the trucks and the trailers are really handy to have. Sometimes you'll have a crew without trailers, sometimes you'll have a crew without a grain cart. Like, everything is just so different per the financial standing, like per the preference of the farmer and the harvester. Like, there's some farmers that will hire just a combine. Like, you'll just, I just need an extra combine during harvest. And so one of the guys off the crew will go with the combine to that farm, while the other people on the crew are cutting in a completely different spot for a completely different farmer. And that's kind of how they just work. And another thing is that harvesters don't have insurance. So like bad years, bad drought years, if they're not cutting, they're not making money. So like farmers have crop insurance, and they can kind of make a little bit of money when they're, if their crop is droughted out, if it gets hailed out, if there's, something devastating happening to that crop. But a big risk in being a custom harvester is not having that insurance to back you up. I'm not sure if there are options for that. I just know that the people that I worked with didn't have that option. But if you are droughted out, if your farmers are getting hailed out, if you don't have the connections to cut more crop, then you're not making money because your header's not on. The money is not flowing. So that's kind of a downside of harvest, because you don't control the weather, obviously, and what happens to the crops that you were harvesting. But that's just a little something different with harvesters and farmers.
So Emma, you've had a lot of different experiences with different parts of agriculture. Like, the custom harvesting is one part, crop scouting is a different part, seeing other crops. You see a wide variety of crops in your region specifically, but also you've traveled and seen other crops as well. What are some experiences that you've had with different crops and stuff and in agriculture that have really stood out to you, that maybe people that haven't ever seen those crops should go see them?
Well, like you said, I've traveled a lot of different places, but I think just knowing, because if you're a big bread eater, if you're like big into making sourdough is a huge trend on TikTok right now, right? Like, everyone loves making sourdough. It is so cool when people understand the physiology behind the plant that makes a good loaf of bread. Like, there is so much that goes into that and I think as farmers, like, we forget that too. We forget that the quality is important to the end of the game. Like, we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about how much dockage is this going to get at the elevator. But I think for people that aren't as connected to agriculture, being able to see the crops that you are consuming, or like that you're interacting with on a daily basis, would be really cool. And just seeing the vastness of how big operations get. Like, up here you have a bunch of combines rolling in the field at one time. There could be 5, 6, 7, like upwards of that rolling through a field. Harvesting your wheat. Or in California, they have like mass amounts of people moving through a field to pick it clean in a matter of hours and like get it on the shelves the next day. In Australia, they have a different setup down there, but when I went down, the canola was terrible because they got flooded out, but they don't have the crop insurance. So I think people just being able to see the effects that weather and labor have on agriculture and how that food gets to them, I think was your question kind of pointed towards, would be a really cool experience. But yeah, I think my favorite is definitely North Dakota because of just how big it is up here and how crazy it is to see everyone going and hustling and bustling all at the same time. big bread lover state, I guess. So if you like bread, you can come up to North Dakota. We'll show you what's going on.
So, obviously, you probably get a ton of DMs and messages on Instagram, and sometimes you post some of the weird ones, and it's sort of entertaining. But what messages, what's something that somebody has said that's like, that's why I do this? Not a weird message, but just, a meaningful, I'm sure you get those talking about somebody who might not even be an ag, just talking about, hey, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think I always enjoy getting those, and I don't respond to a lot of them because social media is weird. But I've gotten a lot of messages or emails, even especially from younger people. So people that are still in high school, still in FFA, that are debating whether or not they want to stay in agriculture. Those are some of the most moving messages that I've received. It's like, hey, I decided to stay on my family farm because I watch your videos, and I'm like, it just kind of makes me tear up a little bit sometimes because you never know the impact that your content is going to have, and you don't even have to know the person. You don't know what you posted, you don't know what it was that just finally clicked. Because, sometimes I scroll on the internet and I see a video that just moves me, and that person will never know that. And that's the coolest part about social media. But I think definitely that younger generation that is like, hey, this is why I'm staying in agriculture, or hey, I got a job in agriculture because of you. Or it's even better when I actually connect with the people that are messaging me and I get to set them up with a job with somebody that I know, and it changes their life. It is so insane. And that is the most rewarding part of what I do, is being able to see the impact that my content has on other people, and even other people's content. There's people that'll tag me and a couple other creators in videos all the time, and it's just they look up to people like that, and it's just a crazy, humbling experience.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting what social media can do. Now, there's good sides and bad sides to social media, like everything in life. But when you post on social media, on it a lot, getting good comments and stuff, how important do you feel it is for you to be on social media, or for people to share what's going on in agriculture?
I am definitely always the advocate that will say, share your story and share your story. Ag facts are great to share. But the more that every person in agriculture can share their personal story, the more you're going to find people that can relate to that. Because if I have some Joe Schmo following me from somewhere in Florida, sure, that's great. But if they find a farmer from Florida on their feed, that's even better. They're finding relatable content because they have people around them with similar experiences, even though we have that wall of okay, you're not involved in agriculture and you are. There's always something you have in common with someone else that wants to find your content that is going to change something about someone. And I know that's a lot of sums, but there's just a crazy amount of connections that we all have that we don't know unless we start sharing that. So that's something I never realized until I started sharing that.
The other thing you probably didn't realize was the connections that you might make through social media, considering the fact that this podcast wouldn't even have started without me and Jack meeting through social media. But what are some of the unexpected or different connections or different experiences that you've gotten to do because of posting your story on social media? Or is there a cool experience?
Yeah, I think the most recent one, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I went with Kate Thornton. She's from Washington. She's at the handle Apple Girl Kate, for those of you listening. But she got connected with Theo Vaughn, and we went to one of his shows in Washington, and we got to bring Theo Vaughn an apple pie and talk to him about agriculture and show him our videos and stuff like that. We were all just having a blast and hanging out and talking. But that is one of the crazier connections that has come out of that. And then another one that kind of started me off was when I went to National Farm Machinery Show in 2022, I think. After that machinery show, I dropped out of college and was I want to go do agriculture stuff, full time, this is my thing. I probably had 10,000 followers on TikTok, and I wasn't dropping out of college to do the social media stuff. I just wanted more experiences, because I met all these people, I connected and stuff like that, and I was like, this is what I want to do. But while I was at that show, I stood in line for 2 hours to meet Larson Farms. I didn't even really know them, right? I'm not a content consumer. I just know that I knew that they were in Minnesota, and I knew that they could teach me something about agriculture that I couldn't learn in Idaho from Idahoans, and I wanted to branch out and see all this different stuff. I knew they were good on a camera, and I was like, I want to go film people that are comfortable with that. So the second that I met them, I think that changed a lot of stuff for me. And I'd already connected with Millennial Farmer on TikTok. I have no idea how any of this happened. Like, I was just making TikToks and posting blah, blah, blah. But I think meeting them within the agriculture realm of content creation definitely changed a lot for me. And just making the effort to go out of your way to meet people changes everything. And like, being considerate, you know, minding your manners, like, and having fun with people that you meet at these shows will literally change your life. Because I went on that 5,000-mile road trip. I went from Idaho to Montana, over North Dakota, like into Minnesota, down to Iowa, and then back over to Idaho. And I met with a bunch of different farmers from everywhere, and that was like one of the best road trips of my life because I was doing it by myself, and I just went and met with all these people, including like Zach and Chet. And there's so many people that are willing to take a chance on you and just teach you. Like, if you have genuine intentions and you're just getting after it, there's so many people that want to connect with you. But yeah, those are two of my crazier experiences, I guess, of like, how is this happening right now? And then there's a bunch of like famous people that follow me because of what I post. Like this running lady on TikTok that has a bunch of followers. She started running marathons. I don't know why she follows me, but like, we're all kind of just mutuals, and it's all fun, and it's super fun to connect with people that are famous that are outside of agriculture. So it's always fun to connect with the ones that are inside agriculture, but the ones outside of agriculture, I really want to be able to like collaborate with some of them more.
Well, what's the first thing that you tell people that are not in agriculture that if you see in person, or what did you say to Theo Vaughn, the first thing about agriculture?
I think I asked him how many square feet are in an acre. We were talking about how, like, that is always my go-to. And that's kind of how I started on TikTok, is like the ag fact quizzes and asking people how many square feet were in an acre, and I put that in every ag fact quiz. But every time I don't know what to talk about, I'm like, so y'all know about acres. It's such an odd thing, but it's just, you know, asking people what they know about tractors. You know, like, some people don't know that tractors don't attach to, that they don't stay attached to what they're pulling through the field. Like, they don't know that there's a hitch pin in there. You know, it's like, oh. That's stuff that I take for granted for knowing, but it's just crazy once you start talking. Or, like, even just talking about an apple. Like, there's the video about Theo Vaughn asking Kate, like, you know, he's making a joke about crossbreeding apples behind a curtain, but it's just stuff like that. Like, people genuinely don't know, and he was joking about it, but you never know what they don't know until you ask them about it, so.
So where do you see, you know, your Instagram, TikTok, you know, Ag with Emma, where do you see that going, you know, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
I definitely don't know. I've always just kind of pointed in some kind of
You're just
general
going with the
direction
flow.
and shot, you know, it's like, because, you know, if you would have asked me a year ago, I'd have been like, oh yeah, I'm going to be farming and all this stuff, and now I'm like, well, I kind of just like what I do as a crop scout now. Like, I've always wanted to be a mom, so social media definitely starts taking a backseat there. So, like, hopefully in 10 years I'm still educating people about agriculture, but it probably will just be in a different way. And I find that the more doors that I open for myself with keeping my options open, the better. So you just never know where it's going to go, and I think that's probably
right.
the best mindset to have about social media, because it's literally always changing. Like, there's going to be new trends tomorrow that we don't even know about right now. So
I wish we did know about them.
yeah, literally same.
Yeah, things are changing all the time with that. So another question that I have for you, just for someone starting out, obviously you have a lot more followers than just starting out, but what advice would you have for someone that wants to get into making content and showing off their farm and sharing their story?
I would say be genuine. I also tell people sometimes that it's really not for everybody. Like, social media is hard and it's rough sometimes. But when you don't take everything that is said on your page with a grain of salt, like, ignore the hater people. Like, there's going to be grumpy people everywhere, and I think that's the downfall of a lot of pages. Like, when you focus on the negativity and you focus on, like, oh, but this person said this, it affects your mindset and it affects what you're posting. Because if you're just posting to clap back at people that are like, well, you didn't do this, this, and this, like, delete the comment and move on if it really bugs you that much. But I would also say that, you know, back to being genuine, like, you're the only one with your story, so share that. You don't have to get super personal. Like, if you don't want to, like, you can get personal. I've gotten really personal on my social media accounts. Like, sometimes I regret it, sometimes I don't. But you are always changing someone's life, and at the end of the day, if you're influencing one person, you're influencing, you know, you're influencing already. But I just keep the labels off of it. I don't like calling myself an influencer. I just, I'm everybody's friend or acquaintance. So the more personable you can be, the more people kind of chase after that content, I think. And then, yeah, if something's not working, try something else. Like, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall to see if they stick when they're done. Like, that's kind of what you have to do with social media. Like, just throw the social media noodle at the wall, and if it doesn't stick, like, keep cooking.
Emma, so we talked a little bit about your Instagram or Facebook. Where can people find you on that, and where can people find your videos that you make?
Yeah, so I'm Ag with Emma everywhere. There's a lot of spam accounts, but my accounts are the ones with the blue check marks on all the apps except TikTok. If you do follow me and you start getting messages from me, it's not me, because I know that I have a really big spam account problem of like fake profiles. So yeah, it's just Ag with Emma on TikTok, X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
So what's your favorite platform?
Definitely Instagram. That's like my little baby. Like, TikTok is kind of the stepchild of the Ag with Emma operation. It hasn't been very nice to me lately, but we're working on it. So I don't know. YouTube is okay, but I got a bunch of subscribers from like short videos, so no one really sticks along for the long form content, and long form content takes so long to edit. And then X, I kind of just post everything I post on Instagram over there. So I don't know how that happened, but I have like 35,000 followers on X, and I'm like, well, it's really easy to just control, copy, paste, and sometimes that's what you got to do.
So do you do all of this yourself, or do you have anybody that helps you create content?
Yeah, so I create all the content, and then I have a assistant or like a virtual assistant that will help me repurpose it. And she'll kind of, attend to my comments, messages, and stuff like that. Because I try to stay off social media. Like, I'm not on my phone. Like, I try to not be on my phone a lot. Like, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I have a couch riding weekend. But, yeah, for the most part, I'm posting all my stuff. I don't use the scheduling a lot. I still edit my videos on my phone. Like, I don't do a lot of desktop stuff, which is wild. But I've built all this on, like, CapCut. So there's nothing wrong with starting with the basics and sticking with the basics, because it can get you a lot.
You know what works.
Exactly. So there's always room for improvement in my area of an organization with how I handle social media, but definitely, yeah, I've handled a lot of this by myself. I just barely hired an assistant to help with like engagement and stuff like that, because it's too much. Like, I can't keep up. I think I have like 800,000 across all my platforms now, and it's like, yeah.
That's a full-time job.
Yeah, and I already have a full-time job. Like,
Yeah.
I work for somebody
You need another
else
one.
myself, and like, it gets too much.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. I think this turned out great. And you already mentioned your handle and where they can find you. And so, obviously, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can find Emma on all those platforms as well. And so thank y'all for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.